You just can't make this stuff up anymore. The UK now officially wants to confiscate Bitcoin to balance the budget deficit. How absurd is that, seriously? They're planning to start with just under Bitcoin. We're also seeing major central banks meeting with Bitcoin OGs, like here with C, for example, and now we even have comedians in Germany like Salim Samatu talking about Bitcoin and exposing the scam of the fiat system. The euro is going to collapse. Either the EU will fail, or the euro will fail, or both will fail. This is now being discussed openly on one of the biggest podcasts in the German-speaking world. Really powerful story here. Let's definitely check this out now. Before we do, it would make me really happy if you could take a second and quickly hit the like button below. I'm really grateful for your support. It means a lot to me. But we really want to ask you to take a second here, so these videos and these messages can be pushed even further into the mainstream and the Bitcoin super pump can keep going. As a thank you, let me show you these tiles. Check it out. Really well laid here with a super cool grout line. Nice cool. And just so you really realize the level we've reached here now. These days, presidents are meeting up with Bitcoin OGs. Oops, earlier I said central banks are meeting with Bitcoin OGs. Of course, I meant presidents are meeting with Bitcoin OGs here. I just had it wrong in my head somehow. So here, Binance founder CZ is meeting with the president of Kazakhstan, and they want to go all in on Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining, buying Bitcoin, and so on. And that's obviously a pretty wild story. Apparently, the US also wants to buy Bitcoin, but that's still being delayed here. We also see here she's meeting with Pavel Durov, who is also a very well-known Bitcoiner, bought in at $700, held on to everything until now, bought several thousand Bitcoin back then, and now, of course, is set for life. And of course, that's really good for adoption. But now, in fact, a Hibbs message has come in here, which is, of course, scandalous. UK wakes if China regime WCTM get current value of seized Bitcoin. So what this means in German is that the UK more or less wants to confiscate Bitcoin profits here. Maybe not exactly confiscate Bitcoin itself, but definitely wants to seize the profits from Bitcoin. So this is about confiscated Bitcoin. Here, Bitcoin is being confiscated, and you really have to let that sink in. They want to know, when were these coins confiscated? Does it say here somewhere 2018 is when they were confiscated? And do you realize what massive unrealized gains that means now? And now they're just saying, okay, you'll get the dollar equivalent, but you won't get any of the upside. And if you ask me, that's nothing short of expropriation. That means these Bitcoins are now worth double, triple, 4, 5, or even 10 times as much as they were back then. And they're just saying, okay, in 2018, like I checked, for example, on April 7th, 2018, one Bitcoin was worth 7,000 euros. And now just think about that for a second. The price of Bitcoin has more than increased tenfold. So if you ask me, you can clearly call this an expropriation, even if some people might say, yeah, but they're still getting something. Sure, but if you look at the value of Bitcoin or something like that, it's just outrageous. Basically, they're just taking away all the profits from people, and I have to say, it's not officially planned yet, but apparently they really want to push this through now. It also says here, according to a Thursday Financial Times report, the UK High Court may decide to reimburse only the original value of the instrument, about 640 million British pounds. And that's in current terms. So the current value of those 640 million is now 7.24 billion. Honestly, it's just unbelievable what's going on here. And the absolute kicker is what's being described here. Now there's a debate about whether to use these surpluses to pay off the budget deficit here. There's a budget deficit of 40.5 billion, and so they could use the 7 billion here to help balance the budget a bit. That means instead of politicians being frugal here, instead of the government being thrifty, being more efficient, for example, by cutting out bullshit jobs, just doing their work, doing their job, instead of attracting innovation to the country, instead of actually moving the country forward, they just say, yeah, whatever, let's just take it from some Bitcoiners. It's not a big lobby group, it's irrelevant anyway, there won't be any big outcry, and these are really old cases. Maybe some of them have already passed away and won't care about it anymore or something like that. Let's just expropriate the unrealized gains here and simply take the profits for ourselves. The crazy thing is that all the Bitcoin holdings currently in government hands, at least the official ones, also all come from confiscations. And the US Secretary of the Treasury also said, more or less, yes, he wants to continue promoting Bitcoin here, and you can definitely accumulate it, but mainly in the form of confiscation. He didn't say it word for word, but roughly in that direction, that they want to keep confiscating Bitcoin, but when it comes to buying, they're not so sure, but confiscating is always fine. So that's just really, yeah, I'm honestly at a loss for words sometimes. I don't know, maybe you guys have something to say about it. And I was just as speechless after watching this clip here. And this is truly a very worthwhile podcast here from Ben Unscripted. And here we have a clip from Salim Samitu. I still know him from back in the day when I used to watch his comedy and stuff like that. I did. Really funny guy. You should definitely check out his YouTube channel and all that. But now he was on this podcast and just dropped an absolute bombshell. Check this out.
€1 more, it's obvious.
How do you think it's going to continue?
Man, it's a disaster. It's just going to keep getting worse. So in the end, there will either be no more EU or no more euro. It's obvious because if you keep piling on this debt, Germany has always been the stabilizer of the euro, but now Germany is about to become another Greece. Germany is basically financing the whole EU, and if all of that falls apart and Germany goes from being a donor country to a recipient country, that's it for the EU. Then it's basically back to square one.
Yeah, or at some point you just fall back into nation states again.
Exactly, or you end up with no currency at all. This whole dictatorial fake system stays, but you have your own currency again. That means sooner or later the euro will be gone, or it will just keep getting devalued so badly that the euro technically remains. But all that's left is a shell of its former self.
Do you have Bitcoin?
Yeah, of course, that was also I'm so grateful for my studies. That was my field of study too, cybersecurity and crypto. I was already doing that back then. I set up the first Bitcoin miners in Paraguay, where electricity was the cheapest. And to this day, I keep adding more miners there.
So I'm really going crazy with it. He's going all in on Bitcoin here, and honestly, it's the only real solution. I mean, not just the euro will collapse, the dollar will collapse, all fiat currencies will collapse. But the euro was already a really dumb idea from the start, throwing together different economic powers into one currency basket. That has never worked. Maybe you can make a currency basket if you combine several strong nations like Germany together with another strong nation or something like that. Or for example, a few weaker ones like Greece, Italy, Spain, or something like that. But if you throw together weak and strong nations, then what happens is that the whole thing just won't work, not at the front or the back. That was bad German. So basically, it just won't work at all. That's just how it is. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the euro. And the crazy thing is that Germany just has to foot the bill here. We have the target two balances, where Germany is basically the big loser. We have a potential debt union where Germany is the big loser. Now we have the euro crisis with euro bonds and such already being considered. So basically, they're talking about pooling debts even more than they already do, even issuing euro bonds, which of course would finance even more crap. And then we have a central bank, the ECB, with Christine Lagarde and company, shout out to them, who are actually buying bonds from weaker nations and selling bonds from stronger nations. Sometimes there aren't even reporting requirements for these scandalous bond buying programs. There's really no other way to put it. And then they're forcing a digital euro on us, selling it as a big innovation, but in reality, it's the biggest scam ever. There are going to be a bunch of podcasts and interviews coming out about this. I've already reported on it several times, but it's just a shady operation they're running here. They're selling it as freedom, but it's nothing more than a surveillance tool. And that's exactly what he's saying. Either the euro will collapse, or Europe will collapse, or both will collapse. I actually assume that sooner or later both will collapse. First, it'll keep inflating. There will be even more surveillance, more control, digital euro, CBDC, and so on. But in the long run, it just can't work because we always see that socialism doesn't work, and that's exactly where we're drifting. But the cool thing is, if you understand all this like Salim here, then you can just say, screw it, I'll get myself some Bitcoin, I'll get some Bitcoin miners, and so on. Bitcoin mining probably isn't for everyone. You need cheap electricity and so on, probably in Paraguay, hooked up to a hydro dam, I assume. But if you have Bitcoin, you can massively profit from this whole situation because the more the central banks escalate, the more Christine Lagarde loses it, the more the euro goes off the rails, the more you can benefit as a Bitcoin holder. Because more and more people will come to Bitcoin, not because they want number go up gains, but simply because they have to flee. That means Bitcoin will become the ultimate escape currency. That's actually a prediction I made a very long time ago, that maybe the next big bull run could be triggered by this. Maybe not in the next 1 or 2 months, but perhaps the run after that could actually be triggered by fear of confiscation, like we've just seen in the UK, but also fear that, for example, the euro might collapse. And what we're also going to see is that we're very likely entering a phase of high inflation now. For example, Germany has always been somewhat responsible with its debts, but of course, it's like being in a room, or let's say, in a shared apartment. You're the one in the shared apartment who always cleans up, washes the cups, makes your bed, keeps everything nice, and all around you, everyone else just makes a mess. No one washes their cups, they throw their clothes everywhere, don't make their beds, leave trash all over the place, and so on. At some point, you start thinking, damn, I'm always cleaning up after these people, and eventually, I just don't feel like cleaning up after them anymore. I want to go wild too, I want to get into debt as well, I want to make a mess too. And then you just start adapting to the people around you, you end up on exactly the same level, and that's probably what we're seeing now. That Germany will probably lose its discipline too, will also get into debt, and then the whole thing will escalate out of control. The euro will crash, Bitcoin won't crash, Bitcoin will keep going, and Bitcoin will benefit from these crises. That's why Bitcoin is also a crisis winner. Also, let me know in the comments below if I should invite Salim here for an interview. I think it could get really intense. I'll definitely try to reach out, just need to see if I can find his email somewhere. If anyone has his email, drop it below so I can contact him, or reach out to him yourself and tell him I want to do an interview with him. Seriously, he's an absolutely awesome guy. And what he said about Bitcoin and all that too. By the way, if you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link below for you and 20 Bitcoin. Feel free to check it out. It's a super easy app to buy Bitcoin cheaply, easily, and securely in Germany, the German-speaking region, Austria, and so on, just everywhere. And use the code BitcoinHotel. You can save 20% buying Bitcoin. See you next time. Peace out.